We're beginning in the middle because the purpose of this episode is just to create understanding with the feelings of being lost or listless or confused or in pain and not really understanding why. So we're gonna start with the problems that people run into when things aren't going well. I call it the all is lost moment, but you could call it rock bottom, you could call it a setback, whatever it is.
Dark night of the soul.
Dark night of the soul. That's right. That's totally right.
That's a book.
Yeah, and it's a great theme in literature and in music and in art because we can all relate. So for me, I just connect it to being disconnected from purpose, community, and self, and not really understanding why. So to begin in the middle, I'm Josh.
I'm Miles Salisbury. Do we want to talk about like our backgrounds or why we're here? What's the purpose?
We'll have a whole episode about that, but
this is just who are these talking heads here?
We're gonna get some of our story right now because I want you to share with the audience and me what your all is lost moment was and what rock bottom felt and looked like for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which one are we talking about?
Are those two separate things? Okay, sure, both. But so figure out like where you like dark night of the soul. I think the thing that is emblematic of that experience of having a dark night of the soul is thinking that or not being able to see the end of it. Feeling like I'm gonna always feel this way.
It's not gonna end.
I don't know which way is up, and I might never.
Yeah, that's a scary place. The mind hates a vacuum, has to fill a narrative in. Since we're biased towards the negative, we often just fill it in with a junk story, and then we buy into it.
A junk story.
So easy.
Well, so for your all is lost moment, or a dark night of the soul, or if you've had multiple, what was the first one or the most important one for your narrative?
First one, probably my parents' divorce when I was about 8. I remember life before that and life after. Life was hunky dory, Skittles and rainbows, cool childhood. And then I remember when my parents sat us down. I had 3 siblings at the time. I have 7, by the way. I have a blended family.
Yeah.
It's complicated. More dark nights involving that. Good things too. And when they told us, I just remember being a pile of anxiety just all the time. I went to full parent trap mode. Tried to get them back together. I thought I was a genius, they're going to sell the house. So I literally every day walk out and rip the for sale sign out of the ground, thinking, oh, no one's going to buy the house. It's fucking genius, man. No one's going to, it's not for sale. And of course, the realtor just put it back up. And then I just my mom would start dating and I'd try to sabotage. I remember the first time the boyfriend came over, I ran and got the door and before my mom. And I opened it and the guy's like, hello. And I go, my mom farts. I was like, that'll do it,
Yeah, you thought of things you didn't like.
yeah, exactly. I don't like that. You won't like that. And of course that embarrassed her. But it sucked. Forced to be the man of the house when my dad was gone because I only got to see him every other weekend, so that was bad. Amidst of all this was a Mormon upbringing. So Dad was not born into it, Mom was. They met, knew each other for 2 minutes, had me the minute after, that whole thing, as the Mormons do. And so when my dad left, all that pressure to be the example for my siblings and the man of the house, unintentionally by my mom, was kind of given to me. So I just got crushed with all kinds of weird stuff.
This is 8 years old? About 8.
Yep. So big, very, very, very traumatic. Lots of ways. It wasn't fun. And that set off a lot of weird things the rest of my life. That's somewhere we'll talk about attachment theory, attachment disorders.
100%.
Definitely picked up the anxious and avoidant styles had a dad that was not around or close enough, and a mom that smothered the shit out of me. So it's like someone come towards me and they love you, and you go, "Whoa, take a step back," or they seem like they're leaving, and you chase after. And it was very confusing. I had to do years of therapy to repair that. Probably one of the reasons I am a therapist is because of that moment.
So that's like you're identifying also some capital T trauma, but that was the first like dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
What about as an adult where you felt uncertain and lost?
So we're skipping a bunch of life, but the next one that just pops in, first thought, best thought. I graduated with, this is before PhD, got the master's degree at Naropa University. That was one of the best experiences of my life. But when I graduated, all my classmates who they felt like family. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had family, close relationships, super bonded. Everybody left. A few people stayed around, but everyone went off and did their lives. And I had a roommate at the time who I made good friends with playing soccer, who's from Germany. He got engaged, and all of a sudden I had no roommate. And got out of grad school and realized, oh, you don't have your license yet. You have to work for an organization. Oh, by the way, we're not going to pay you shit. So I had to go live in like low-income housing by myself with no one. So strip everything away. Oddly enough, like people joke, oh, it was Saturn's return. That's at age 27. Literally, it was age 27. So whether you go for the astrological stuff or not,
I love it.
That definitely hit, and I was depressed, lost, scared, and my first job doing group psychotherapy with repeat DUI offenders. Hardest job to this day I have ever had. Right out of grad school. And they didn't know what the hell they were doing. They're like, you're the doctor. They called me doctor. There wasn't even a doctor yet.
Yeah.
And so I had to figure it out. I mean, these groups of like 45 men and women. Like groups should be like 10, 12 tops. It was just me. And then they had all this curriculum and shit. And I figured it out. But it was hard. It was really hard. So I had to do that and then go home by myself into this, felt like almost like a prison environment. And it worked me out of that. So that was the second one. And more presently, you could say I'm in one right now. The whole purpose and meaning, midlife transition, as Carl Jung calls it, or midlife crisis, as our society calls it. That's hit. Usually it's a crisis because we get the trophy wife or get the Corvette, or I'll work twice as hard at this job. I hate that'll solve it. And these things work for about 90 days, and then you're like 3 times as crushed afterwards. Or what Carl Jung would say was pay attention to what wants to come through you into the world. And that is not a question that's answered immediately. You have to keep asking the question. And you get trailheads. And synchronistically enough, like doing one of these, like doing a podcast was one of those. And so I've been practicing as a therapist for a long time. It's got kind of stagnant. And I've had these questions of like, is this it? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Can I sit with people for the rest of my life in this way? And part of me goes, yes. And part of me goes, I don't know. It's a really, really, really hard job. People may or may not understand how difficult it is emotionally, mentally, psychologically, physically. You're just sitting all day. That's not good for you either.
Well, holding space for other people's, emotional, problematic emotions and inner conflict that is externalized. And like you're just trying to be a referee and maybe an honest broker between parts of other people's selves.
Yep.
And, not have the life sucked out of you while you're doing it.
Correct. And if we're the instrument of change, we have to stay sharp. So we have to do all the work. They're borrowing our nervous systems to regulate theirs. Just like as a parent, your kids are borrowing your nervous system to know how to do that for themselves. And that's why people come into trauma, because their parents did not give that to them. They had to either do it with their parents or their parents weren't there. And that was my experience. I had to figure that out for myself too.
Yeah.
Really hard.
And that is that called enmeshment or codependency, or what is that called?
That can come from that. Enmeshment is where codependency. You're too close. You don't know where you are. The other person is. People think that that's the right move, but it's not. You have to have your own friends, your own life. You walk the path together. You're not. One person's not like a fireman carrying the other person. You're gonna fall down at some point. That's not gonna work out well.
Yeah.
You caretake, things like that. We can get into that at some point. There's a whole.
Oh, well, we're about to. So the being in this place of feeling disconnected from purpose, although you're on the path that you created, that you were led to by the desire to help other people and to serve and to also, the work that you've chosen, Miles, is like cathartic to you to both teach and live and embody and do. But at some point you have to resell yourself on what you're selling, right? Like
that's what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah. Dude, it's important. That's just you got to reinvest in belief, and also be willing to like you were talking about Carl Jung, ask the question and listen for the answer and live in that question.
Yeah, and he said during the midlife transition, if it's not coming to you, think about what you like to do as a kid for play. And I just wanted to play fucking war, and I wanted to be an archaeologist. Well, I'm kind of digging around people's minds. I'm doing the Coast Guard Auxiliary now, but if I think back to high school, there's a seminal moment where I really wanted to join the Marines. I knew through and through. My grandpa was a Marine pilot. My other grandpa was a Navy pilot. So I'm going to do this. And my dad said, no, you're the oldest male. You're going to college. And I did not want to disappoint him because I didn't feel like I had enough love from him growing up. So I kind of just waffled in my own way. I kind of was rebelling. So I didn't sign up for school and didn't join the Marines. I kind of just fucked off with my friends. That motherfucker signed me up for college and picked my classes and put me in like geology, like the most boring fucking class ever. But that's why I went to college, because he told me to. But if I could go back in time and punch myself in the face and say, go to the Marines, I would have. It's a massive regret. And there's a whole backstory of trying to get in since then, like we can talk about at some point. And I say still may do with the age requirements, maybe lifting. Hopefully they do. We can, if anyone's curious about that, I can tell that backstory at some point. But that's what I wanted to do when I was younger. Was that. So I'm trying to get that back now. And Jung would also talk about wholeness. Like you want a good blend of the masculine and feminine, yin and yang. We all have that. And the first half after when I got into my into Rompa I've been drowning in the feminine for so long. We've been doing this work as a very feminine, energetically feminine undertaking. You're listening, you're taking stuff in, you're receiving, you're not directing, ordering. It's not very linear, it's more circular. So more recently I've been trying to get more of the masculinity back. That military call has been one of them. When I worked in a jail for a while too, getting my licensure hours. I really felt it then because I was working mostly with men, but I felt like I had a group of guys that I was connecting with. I was doing really good work, but it almost felt like a gang mentality, and I was working with the deputies in there too, and it was quite a cool mix, but I hadn't felt that sense of masculine camaraderie since sports in high school. And so I've been kind of really trying to get that back without, with still bringing the feminine along. You don't want to ditch one for the other. You have to integrate. So how to do that? It's hard. Wholeness is hard. Jung would say you got to hold the tension of the opposites. I think he's called it the pathway to individuation. Like, what's the third option? When you hold paradox, a third path emerges. And that's fucking hard too. It's easy to just go to can't be, tell me what to think, tell me what to say. I'll just open my mouth and just pluck that food in and I'm done. But there's a massive price to be paid for that. You're not growing.
Well, you're you're already trying to figure out the dark night of the soul or the solution. We're gonna get there. But I wanted to. Is shamanic death the same thing as the dark night of the soul?
No idea. Dark Night of the Soul, that's a book by Thomas More. It's kind of like what we're talking about. James Hall says one calls it called the swamplands of the soul. Like depression, despair, anxiety, all the shit emotions.
Are you familiar with like ego death?
Only in the Buddhist sense. I don't, it's the same thing we're talking about.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've had lots of like ego deaths or dark nights of the soul, and like some of yours. I mean, like I think the commonality in among all these things and the moment you're in now is, for good or for bad, they induce behaviors, like new behaviors, new parts of your identity come out, and I went through 3 in a row, and they were sort of like super related to the way that I was kind of living my life for the first like 37 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I got divorced in 2019.
How long were you married for?
I was together with my wife for 5 years. I think
Mm-hmm.
we're only married for 2 years.
Were you young?
Yeah, emotionally super young. I mean, I'm like still. I mean, I didn't know. I feel like I didn't know anything about myself when I was married. I was still living out the idea that that I had to take care of everybody else.
Mm.
And I wasn't even aware of what my needs were at the time.
You were caretaking.
Yeah, fully caretaking. And I didn't. I wasn't even able to figure out what my own emotions or needs were. I didn't have the skills and the patience to sit with my own uncomfortable emotions and deal with any like grief or trauma. And we'll get into this later, but I also had a disorganized attachment style, which made me successful in my business, which ended in 2020, where I ran a gym called Training for Warriors Portland for 5 years. It was a ton of fun. And the thing that made me a good coach also made me a bad business owner, which I wanted to make everybody my friend. And I wanted to like
classic,
take really good care of everybody.
Mm-hmm. Some of that's good, but when it goes too far.
100%. Yeah. And just like, the ultimate, not understanding what your own needs are, like not understanding what was bad for the business, but good for, my ego at the time, which was like thinking that, I'm a good caretaker. So like I'm doing it right because I'm producing good results and I'm making people happy, but it didn't work for me, my family, or my business. So it was like that lack of balance of, I guess, there was a codependent, on steroids, codependent relationship on steroids, and a lot of my validation, like I was looking for the people that I was working with to validate me,
Of course.
I didn't know what that was about. So like I had kind of lived in such a way that the rules that I was living by made it impossible for me to have a healthy long-term relationship. And it also made it impossible for me to be a successful business owner if my rule was I have to not make other people uncomfortable, or I have to, make every decision has to be good for them, and it may or may not be good for me, and so I kind of ran myself into this wall.
Did you feel like the chameleon kind
of? The chameleon? Would I change the answer based on who I was talking to? No. I just, here's a great example. I got a 1-star review the other day for my business, and I was so happy, and I was sending it to my friends, and this person was very angry with me, and I thought it was such a sign of progress,
right?
And because I was telling some of my friends, I was like, there was a time in my life where I never would have gotten a negative review, because I would have done whatever it took for that person to like me.
Correct.
And so I would have bent over backwards. I would have trained for free. I would have done, whatever to make that person happy. And like, a reasonable person who's showing up in the world will make some people happy, some people neutral, some people will not like.
Can't avoid it.
And yeah, exactly. And it's like, and it was so good for me to get that. And I was like, that for me, that was a sign of progress. And so the chameleon, no, it was just so far on the other end of the people pleasing spectrum that like it wouldn't seem reasonable. And there's a lot of that in the healing trades. I think like a lot of people will take on what would be unreasonable to take on in any other circumstance. You mentioned the financial prospects of coming out of grad school and having to get into what do you call it? Low income housing. The average personal trainer makes like $32,000 a year, something like that.
Really?
Yeah. And having been in the industry for 20 years and helped a lot of other trainers with their businesses, I know that's about right. Like they may be billing for 60 or 70, but once they actually write themselves a check, they are definitely underneath 40K for most of them, which means that you have to live with other people. You can't be independent. You're a social worker at that point. The top 20% can do a little bit better than that, and the top 4% can do really well. But basically, 80% of the industry is not doing well.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, salary.com. You can look it up. But a lot of times, like the reason why the helping professions people will take the deal that's not good for them is because they want to help so badly. It's so in alignment with their identity. And it meets their model of the world. Like what's good for other people may not be good for me, but that's okay. And whether you're a nurse making $21 an hour, or you're a personal trainer, or you're a health coach, or a therapist, like you think, well, but I'm making so many other people happy, and ultimately that's not sustainable, which is why the burn rate is 90% year over year, which means that you have a 1% chance of making it 10 years, or a tenth of 1%. I'm not good at math, so it might be.
Numbers are hard.
It's 10% of the 10 of remaining 10 of the remaining 10 of the remaining 10. So it might be like a tenth of 1% after 10 years. But huge attrition rate. I'm sure same thing. I'm sure in your profession there's.
Yeah, I don't think it's that bad, but burnout definitely a thing.
So there I was, and I like my relationships were working, my career, my business wasn't working, my financial health was a mess, and even though I was working super super hard, like unbelievably hard, I cringe at how hard I was working. I still didn't feel like I was contributing enough, which just means like, if you don't feel enough when you start, you're certainly not going to feel like you're enough when you finish. But I remember feeling like an imposter in my community and like I didn't belong anywhere, and just carrying that around with me. And I think that, knowing what I know now, it's that I had that, sense of like, what's wrong with me? Something, I'm broken. This is, other people don't feel this way. And that was infecting every part of my life, and that I was projecting that onto. But part of it, things weren't working and things were broken. So I mean that wasn't like a fantasy, something that was a reality. But I wasn't. I was so far in the symptom, I didn't really know what the problems were. But so the dark night of the soul for me was sort of letting go of my role. That like the healing didn't begin there, but just recognizing that the way I was doing it was not sustainable, and that I had to let go. And COVID was a huge gift for me in that regard, because the business really wasn't working. And when it landed, I had sucked at business long enough to be good at business, and I looked at our cash flow and I was like, oh, we're gonna last exactly 5 months and 3 weeks, and then it's over. And then we're just gonna bankrupt, and our stuff will get seized by our creditors. But I was way wrong. Again, math. So I think we lasted another 90 days. It wasn't even that good. Of course, like we didn't have a product to sell, so it's like, it doesn't really matter. If you're a for-profit business and you can't sell anything, it doesn't matter your good intentions. You can't pay your bills. So that was like that was like amputating a limb, because it was like such a relief that it was gone. Like, at least this won't kill me.
Yes.
And but also I had no plan. There was no backup strategy for me. I'd spent 20 years working on one thing. So I was like, I guess I'll drive a truck for Amazon and hopefully people are still ordering stuff and I could make some deliveries. I don't know.
But you learned.
Yeah, what?
You learned from this.
Oh.
Because you're here doing it again.
100%. Yeah. Well, I had made all the mistakes, so I knew what not to do the second time around. And I also started up this practice with a heavy dose of therapy. So it was like only going to work on myself if I, work on other people if I was going to do the work myself.
Yeah.
So, but being in the right place, but feeling like you're not in the right place is a common feeling. Like, because what you're doing right now is not out of alignment with who you want to be.
Correct. Yeah, there just feels like there's something else that needs to complement this, and there's something missing. The military part really is a big part of it. At least that's what I perceive it as. Maybe it's the pull toward masculinity I was talking about. Maybe that comes in another form, but I don't see it in another way. Really, I've had tastes. The auxiliary is kind of fun, but it's one foot in, one foot out. You don't have a DoD number. You're Homeland Security, so you support the regular Coast Guard, which is cool. But I don't get an M4. I get fuck all. You can do columns or gates, and that's fine. We help the active guys get out. And then more recently, I joined the Freemasons just because I always thought, who are these weird guys? I want to try it out. And so I've been poking around with that, but it's not hitting the way I thought these things would. But I have a suspicion that if I were to get into a branch of the military and do something really fun that I'd really be interested in, I would. And yes, there's a whole backstory on why I haven't done it as a mental health professional. That's a long story, and we'll get there. Military has done roles.
Yeah, they do. 100.
I'm talking to Army Major right now, and she's banging her head against the door like, I would take you right now. But I don't know if you want me to explain that.
Well, we're gonna hang out on the symptoms for a little bit longer. But speaking of which, let's talk about the symptoms of dysfunction that come with some of the uncertain beginnings, like from childhood. And we'll go specific in a second, but I want to talk about so the dark night of the soul can be generated by all kinds of things. But I wanted to cover the four main symptoms of trauma, or dysfunctions of trauma. And this is out of the book Outlive by Peter Attia.
Great book.
Which is a game changer. Hugely orienting for health in all aspects.
Great podcast too. The Drive.
There we go. Shout out. Peter Attia and The Drive.
Definitely an influence. I'm wearing my Levels CGM right now because of him.
Hell yeah. So in it, he talks about addictions, codependency, habituated survival strategy, and attachment disorders as being the primary symptoms of dysfunction. And my God, the four of them two of them are really obvious. Two of them are kind of a little bit more subtle. So I wanted to run through what those symptoms of dysfunction are: addictions, codependency, habituated survival strategies, and attachment disorders. And we could rap about them a little bit. And I also wanted to know if you had symptoms of any of these dysfunctions in your life.
All of those. Absolutely. Yeah, and this is we should probably talk about traumatic events versus full-on post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic stress disorder versus acute stress disorder. Totally.
Well, we'll get there, because right now, like, we want to talk about, like, if you're having a dark night of the soul, and I want to connect with people on like how common these dysfunctions are, and then we're going to get into trauma right after that. So because the dysfunctions are, some of them are obvious, like if you're addicted to alcohol or cocaine or heroin or pills or whatever they are. Those are I think what people think of when they think of addictions.
Correct. Substances, yeah.
So yeah, addicted to substances, but also you can be addicted to things like that are not so obvious, like work or perfectionism or exercise. Exactly. You could be addicted to sex. You could be addicted to, what else could you be addicted to that people don't necessarily think of as addictions?
Anything compulsive, I guess.
There you go.
Compulsed to do. It's a good aversion distraction to pain. It works like in the short term. That's why people push that button. But on the back end, there's just so much collateral.
I've totally been addicted to all of these things for different periods of time. Work has probably been the thing that, being busy is probably my favorite thing, being addicted to stress and being busy.
Great distractor.
But I've certainly taken alcohol as far as it's going to go for me. I've taken sex as far as I can go. I can take, I'm really sensitive to drugs, so that was very short lived.
Well, that's good.
yeah, exactly. But I think like if you're somebody who, and this is, I think every person, man, woman, or child, will be at a point in their life where they'll value themselves based on how quote unquote productive they are. And like, am I producing value? Am I adding to my net worth? Am I adding to my net wealth? Am I adding to somebody else's? Am I on the clock? Am I doing something that is producing a benefit? And that, being in that place, is really rewarding externally. So it's kind of hard to shake. But that only goes so far, because it burns you out. B, it really limits how you engage with your personal relationships and the rest of your life, your overall quality of life. And also, by the way, the most successful people are not super addicted to work. Like, they want to get 8 hours of sleep, 7 hours of sleep every night.
Recharge.
They want to play. They want to have positive, supportive relationships. Yep. And they know that if they are really successful, they can hire someone to help them, and they can work circles around you. So they don't need to. It's not. They're not really about monastic productivity. I think Tim Ferriss has been talking about this a lot more lately.
I like that statement.
But codependency. So what does that mean? Because I read that and I think I know what that means. Like, but I wanted to hear it from a professional.
Probably, I always think of caretaking, or you're both sort of relying on each other in ways to function where you can't function by yourself. Like, I can't do life without this person in my life to do what I perceive I can't do. And you both kind of project that onto each other. Oh, you're really strong and you have confidence, and I don't have any, so I go out and I find somebody who's really strong. But then they almost don't have any time for me, or they're unavailable, or vice versa, or caretaking of some sort. It's you're losing you in the other person, and you're both kind of doing it and meeting these needs in not good ways. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, gosh, and on one end of the spectrum, it could be a mechanical thing, like the husband drives, the wife doesn't have a driver's license.
Correct.
And that's very, overtly obvious, where you feel dependent on somebody else. Mm-hmm. And on the other end of the spectrum, if you don't love yourself, you need someone else to laugh at your jokes, because otherwise you don't value your own input. Mm-hmm. So I've definitely I've had a lot of peer-to-peer relationships where I was super codependent. Mm-hmm. And in one way too, my clients, like needing them to like approve and, make me feel good about myself.
Validate you. Mm. Yeah. If we can't self-validate, we look for other people to do it. But that's insatiable, because it's like chasing the dragon after your first heroin hit. You never get it.
Yeah.
You got to forgive it to yourself. It's so counterintuitive and hard because a lot of those are missing pieces from childhood. We're still looking for that parent to give it to us. They never did, so we look for it in other people. But it's not their job.
No, it actually hurts you if you find it, because if you find somebody else to take care of you, that prolongs your codependent behavior and personality. And I think that this one, that's my biggest dragon to slay, because my primal trauma, which we're about to get into, mostly is neglect, enmeshment, and abandonment.
Good times.
That's the trifecta of feeling unsafe without, from without. So being really good at making friends was like a really fast adaptive skill that I had to develop, and in terms of developing positive relationships with adults, to be able to figure out where resources were and get places to live and taken care of. So that we're certainly going to come back to codependency. Habituated survival strategy. I looked this up. Peter Thiel refers to his favorite thing was to go to feeling angry all the time, and he was just accustomed to a state of rage.
Yes.
And so that could also be an addiction. Sure, if you're addicted to being angry. Yeah. But I think it's being habituated to an environment or a relationship that is toxic, and you as a person, or me as a person, not noticing that it's destructive for me,
right,
and have it becoming accustomed to it. So if you're accustomed to chaos, or
the template you were given,
that's right. And it seems normal. It seems par for the course. So it's just one of the things that just like my cycles of dysfunction. It was like I had ended up on a lot of people's couches when I was young. And so when I was an adult and having financial hardship and staying with other people, it had seemed normal to me. It's like if you make a couple of mistakes, you just waka waka, you don't have a place to live. And it's so habituated to it. And it took, I remember when I was just like, okay, that's enough. Like I can figure this out. Like, and it doesn't need to be a big deal. Like, and I had broken the cycle, but it took a long time. Habituated survival trait. That's the brand, dysfunction number 3, symptom number 3. So we've got addictions, codependency, habituated survival strategy, and then I want to touch on attachment disorders, which is that sounds like a clinical term to me. What does that mean?
It's the way you attach to your caregiver. So securely attaches what you want. If you had a parent that's, when you were upset, they gave you a hug, calm your, like the nervous system thing, let me help you regulate. And you can go back out, like, oh, you fell off your bike, skin your knee, it's okay. Hey, let's get back on the bike, and you can do it. If you have a parent that, you'll fall off the bike, oh, I know, it's so scary, let's just not ride the bike, and I'll take care of you. You're getting too much.
Changing the environment to accommodate the stress instead of changing the child to accommodate the environment.
Boom. Yeah. So, and there's we could talk forever about attachment disorders, but that's...
Well, we're going to talk about attachments. You said you had all these, so what was your problem with attachment?
I had 2. So the insecure ones, and they're somewhat different names for something, but there's anxious and avoidance are the big ones, and there's one called disorganized that's a little more rare. The anxious one is I fear someone leaving me, I run after them. Avoidance, I fear intimacy. Someone says I love you, I get scared and I run. And sometimes you can have both, which is rare but also possible. And having a dad that wasn't around enough, there's the anxious one, wanting. Having a smothering mom who tried to control me, there's the avoidant one. Someone comes in and it's like, ooh, warning, someone might try to manipulate you or tell you what to do, and you're gonna have no life. Run away. Confusing that with love. That someone trying to love me, and I was like, "Ooh, get away."
Perfect.
Sucked because it's really confusing when you're dating and you skills and rainbows and the honeymoon period and everything's fine. That attachment system doesn't really kick on. As soon as you start having feelings of love, it kicks on. And so for me, it was like someone would fall in love, and I'd go, oh. I'd find every flaw or reason why I shouldn't be with that person, and then I kind of distance. And then they go, well, screw you. And they leave and I go, wait, don't leave me. And I'm like, what am I doing? I just 2 minutes ago didn't want to be with this person. And now that they're leaving, I'm falling apart. It's so confusing. And so until I realized what that was, got into my field, did therapy, and did therapy on this particular thing, was able to start getting to secure. So secure is like bringing those two extremes towards the middle. So I can tolerate intimacy, and if someone leaves me, yeah, it sucks, but I'm still good, and I can still find other people. I can tolerate loss, and I can tolerate love. And there's a middle part there. The disorganized one, I'm less informed about. I think that's more where you're sort of checked out, like a fight, flight, freeze, like a freeze fawn.
No, you described it adequately, right? So when you have both the anxious and the avoidant, well, so your experience of that was maybe in different contexts you would display disorganized. Like you would be early anxious, late stage avoidant, right? As they got closer to you.
Yeah, early stage avoidance, late stage anxious.
Sure.
They go, why are you not loving me back? Be really insecure, and like I meet a woman who's 10 out of 10, scared the shit out of me, but I don't really want that relationship. So I come in really like, and then if I perceive that they didn't like me, I try to smother or shore things up, or like, let's define the relationship. And that scares women, like, oh, do I have to take care of you, or am I your mom? Not a good scenario. Then I found myself there.
DTR, the need for certainty, which is define the relationship, people, for those of you who are 100 and don't know what that means. So I've been habituated to all kinds of chaos and the attachment disorders. I was disorganized, and I didn't know it until I was in therapy for years and going through how I was connecting with my partner, and realizing that I had desire to control. I wanted to so it was anxious attachment to everybody when meeting them. And the closer they got to me, the more avoidant. And
so it's the same.
You said it was the same. The thing is because I'm really, really good at connecting with people would mistake transparency for vulnerability. So I would give very personal information with people, but I wouldn't tell them what was going on with me at the time. I didn't know what was going on with me at the time. So I wasn't lying. I just didn't know. So, but I couldn't be vulnerable because I hadn't gotten there yet for myself. But the combination of those two things is that, much like you, and we're about to talk about like how this all erupts, right? The volcano and all this is erupting from is that initial trauma piece, and it's a lot more subtle than people think. Because my rule was, because I learned from my mom that I could love you and you would make me feel better. But if you love me, so if you said I love you to me, that means I was responsible for you. So that was the thing that was frightening to me. So when people, close friends, my partner would say I love you and they would really mean it, then I would, that would be a death knell to me, because I knew that I had to take care of my rule was like, okay, great, I got to take care of this person.
Yep.
No matter what. Yeah. And so I was avoidant of that, which led to all kinds of nonsense that I just described, divorce and a series of sabotage relationships before that. But so those are the symptoms of dysfunction, and I wanted to share those because you can be somebody who is disciplined and smart and hardworking and still not create a good result in your life if you're not aware of these things, as I wasn't, as maybe you were, but obviously you are now. And it's not a character flaw to identify these things.
No.
That you have, if you are willing to just do the work and follow the thread to what you actually need. And so part of that is understanding how these are generated. And there's lots of things that can generate, these dysfunctions, these coping mechanisms. And back from the book, Outlive, Peter Attia talks about the 5 capital T's of trauma: physical and mental abuse, neglect, enmeshment, which is the blurring of boundaries between adults and children; abandonment, which is the being abandoned by one or more of your parents; witnessing traumatic events, and then a host of little t traumas. And some of these things are obvious and some of them are not obvious, and they don't, people don't talk about them as frequently. Like Tim Ferriss has had a podcast for 14 years, and he just talked about it for the first time, his own
sexual abuse,
which is physical abuse.
What a service he did by doing that, by the way.
Yeah.
Really amazing.
He was huge.
That's really hard.
It is really hard. It is really hard, and as anybody who is a growth mindset person, who is a achiever, you're the last person to make excuses. You're the last person to, I think, give yourself a break, and you're the last person to want to blame somebody else for.
Oh yeah. Blame yourself
for how you're doing it all. Mm-hmm. So this isn't about blame. This is just about understanding. And so physical and mental abuse. Maybe you could help me with this one. We'll go through each of these, but just to talk about like how they present. Well, physical is easy. So, but I also want to know, like, okay, so let's say that I lip off to my dad and he slaps me in the face. Is that physical abuse? It's physical abuse?
Yeah, and mental abuse. Because you're like, this is the person that loves me, but I'm being hit. So I must be very bad, because if parents are gods are infallible, then I must be the one that's fallible. And kids they want to remain attached, back to attachment, to their caregiver. So they'd rather be, sadly, physically abused than abandoned. Being abandoned is much more terrifying. Evolutionarily, if you're a baby left in the forest, you're going to die. Or if you're
totally
kicked out of the group, you're going to die.
So, okay. So, I don't know. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. So you just took a hit. You just took a hit and walked it off.
Spanking.
Yeah, like
wooden spoon. That's what I got.
I think it's difficult. I had a hard time I would never have said the words until about 6 months ago that I had an abusive childhood. Mm-hmm. And then I freaking read the book, and I was laughing. I mean, I wasn't laughing. I was like, oh fuck. Yeah. Like,
that's something.
There's a lot going on. I think the amount of times I got slapped for something, and in the 80s, strangers would slap you. Like, strangers would, on the bus or in public.
Teachers.
Like you just get straight hit. So.
Straighten up, dude.
It wasn't even a thing, but like you didn't. I'm chuckling at how different it was, because like, other people's parents would correct you physically. Exactly. And it's not funny. Don't do that. But
lose a mark.
And then that is mental abuse. Mental abuse also, just
mind games,
name calling, mind games,
manipulation.
Do you have any references to this in your own life?
Mental abuse?
Yeah, or what are classic signs of mental abuse or examples?
Yeah, manipulation's a big one. If parents not consistent, it's really confusing. Like at one point you're really nice to me, and now you're icing me out, like to passive aggressively punish me. I'm a kid. I don't know what the hell that means, but you make a story about that. Well, I must be doing something. That's where caretaking comes in. Oh, I better be a good boy or a good girl. So, the manipulators are good, because then they start training the kid how to behave, but in ways that fuck them up.
Wow. So my God, this could be a whole episode right here. I just have so many questions, but I want to run through them kind of quickly, because I want to cover the little T's as well. So there's physical, mental abuse, which is also emotional, like you said, just having inconsistent parents, which is like, okay, 90% of listeners. Neglect. What does this mean from a clinical definition?
Seen and not heard, maybe, or basic needs not being met. this can be physical or emotional neglect, absent parents, even down to like, one of the parents just works a lot. They don't mean to neglect you, but like you just didn't get enough attention being seen. It can take lots of forms, sadly.
I have an uncomfortable laugh with all of these because it's just so common. I was at this event yesterday, and the instructor was talking about different experiences in things being fucked up and not acknowledging that they're fucked up. And like, I remember in the second grade, and I was on the free school lunch program for most of my younger childhood, and we had just started the second grade, and I was like a quick reader. It was a quick study at math and reading, and so you get in this little advanced class where you get to you play games while the kids are kind of catching up and doing remedial stuff, and they kind of get to study ahead a little bit. And they send you to lunch early, and you get more time at recess. And I was at lunch in the beginning of the second grade, and I didn't, for some reason, my paperwork wasn't like figured out. So my dad had to pay for my lunch. So I'm there, I'm like 7, and I'm like trying to get lunch, and they're like, "Hey, you need to give me $1.80." And I was like, "Well, I don't have any money." And they're like, "Oh, well, then you don't get to eat lunch." And I was like, "Okay."
Fucking 80s, man.
So there's no remedy. You just don't get food. So I'm like, this place fucking sucks. And I said that out loud, and they took me out of that program. So they took away my my little advanced program for second graders or whatever. And so my lesson, I took the wrong lessons from that. I was like, this place sucks.
Yes.
And if I voice complaints about my needs,
yes.
I'll get punished.
You get punished. Yeah.
And so like it's immediate. I'm just laughing because like that was so rote, and it was not even a thing. Like no one even talked to me about it, and that was just the way that it went down. And so I think a lot of people, this is where you get to these if you're a young man or woman, you get to this nihilist attitude super early on where you're like, oh geez, things are dismal, right? Yeah. Like, and they're not supposed to work for you.
Yeah, this is the way life is. We make up a story if no one tells us.
Enmeshment. Blurring boundaries. So this is something that I know you experienced when you were a kid, where a little bit about manipulation, but it's also like I need you to take care of me if I'm the adult. Like I need to borrow from you. I need your validation.
Yep. Tell me who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. I'm the kid, and I'm telling you who you are.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the fuck I am. Aren't you supposed to help me develop that?
Yeah. And so this is so common because if you are like most of us, or well, like me and like Miles, who had either dad that wasn't there or didn't have a father figure, I had a dad who would constantly break commitments with me, and then he needed me to think that he was a good person, so he would want me to forgive him and make him feel better about it.
There you go.
Which is like, it's so easy to develop that, and then you have that caretaking relationship of like, well, parents are people you take care of.
Correct. They can't do it, so I guess I gotta do it. Because it's scary if no one's doing it. Who's the captain of the ship? I guess I'll promote myself.
That's right.
I don't have the training, but I'll do it.
So did you experience any of that when you were a child?
Yeah, with my mom, things just freaked out with being a single mom with 4 kids, and I was the oldest, and so it was fallen upon me to help her pick up where my dad left off. I don't think she intentionally meant that, but that's what happened. And so I think she tried to enmesh with me, but I pushed back. I rebelled. Turned into a little shit at some point, and then we got into a big blowout, and I was 15. Then I moved in with my dad, so I could see him more. But then I had not a good relationship with my stepmom. That's a whole other story.
They keep going, right? Like
they keep going.
The big T's and little T's, they all blend together, and sometimes the little T's can be more damaging than the big T's.
Little T's add up to big ones.
Abandonment. This is, easy. Most families are in a extended family at some point. Becoming an extended family. This is the greater percentage of families are extended families than they are nuclear families. Nuclear.
Fucking George Bush screwed that up. Yeah. We all can't say it right now because of him. Nuclear.
But
he said nuclear, and the whole DoD just adopted it after a while. It's like, no, it's not nuclear. It's not nuclear. He had some good ones though. Strategery.
That's one of my favorites. So abandonment. So having a parent go away, and the parent could totally not emotionally abandon the kid, but has to physically go away. And just depending on how the communication is between parents and parent and child, the abandonment lands, right?
Yep.
Witnessing traumatic events. So this is witnessing a car accident, witnessing the abuse of a family member, right, or their sibling, or somebody close to you, or gosh, all kinds of things.
Watch the news too much.
Seriously, you see a bunch of murders on the news. The best thing my parents did when I was young was separate because of the problems that they were both having. Watching them beat each other up it was a relief when they separated.
So they physically fought.
Oh yeah.
Oy.
Oh my God. Which is strange because they're both so nice. Like they're both such kind people.
Suppressing some anger. Perhaps?
Well, specifically together, and also suppressing. Yes, there's that. But I think by the time my dad was heavily into drugs,
so he was
that up. Yeah, strung out on meth, and
that'll do it.
Yeah, when one person's in a psychosis, they can have enough of experience for both of them.
Yes, drugs tend to do that. Gas on the fire.
And then the little T traumas, growing up without a father or strong mother figure, will hit you with the little T. I think just moving around a lot. One of the
good one.
Seminal little T, or kind of the bigger T's in my life, was just my peer group constantly changing.
Yeah.
That's
a big one. Yeah.
But what else comes to mind when you think of little T's? Yeah, little T's that add up.
As small as like getting cut from your high school team, or peer rejection, or your lunch incident.
Yeah.
What the fuck, man? I'm starving. Small things like that. If they keep happening over and over and over and over, like once we're going to hit little T traumas no matter what. But if they happen consistently over time for long periods of time, then they start leaving. It's like a death by 1,000 wounds.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that exacerbates all these things is no one trying to regulate your nervous system about it. So if your parents are fighting with each other and they yell at each other and they say mean things to each other, and then they repair, and then they come to you and say, hey, what we were doing earlier was wrong.
That's beautiful. If you witness the repair.
If you witness the repair, and that's the thing, is like all of these things, somebody leaving you and forgetting to pick you up isn't like the defining trauma of your life if they acknowledge it, speak to it, repair it, and say like, oh my gosh, and fix it.
That happened to me, by the way. And they didn't repair.
Yeah, totally, right?
What the fuck?
And I think like burying people call it gaslighting, but it's like ignoring the friction that you're, because like you can't raise a kid or do anything in life without having problems. There are going to be problems. It's the not speaking to it and letting children have their own experience, which they will if you don't narrate it for them. Because kids don't, if mom is angry because, she, like, my mom, so I was raised by a single parent mom, as determined at this point. She was in college and she worked a couple of minimum wage jobs, but if she lost one of those jobs, we were effed. So she could have reduced hours at one place, and then now we're effed. And so now she's fearful and angry, and I'm going to internalize that as a kid.
Of course.
And my mom had dozens of those things, because she was navigating a very, very rough path.
Vicarious trauma.
Right. And so, having a parent that doesn't ever address or repair anything is confusing, and it is what kind of cements these things and creates the adaptive strategy. Well, codependent for sure.
Yeah, caretaking, avoiding conflicts, because if you don't see you see your parents blow out, and then they go and repair later, but you didn't see that, you think, oh shit, that means chaos. People leave each other. It means scary feelings. We should avoid conflict, never do that. But we forget if we do skillful conflict and you make up, you're actually closer.
That's
Conflict
right.
is done skillfully and healthily is brilliant. So, I have kids. If my wife and I have a little spat, we want to make sure we go and talk to them about what happened, or like we made up and we'll go do it again in front of them, like in a shortened version, like everything's fine and this is what happened. That's repair, and then they go, oh, okay, it's okay to fight and work it out, and it doesn't mean we have to avoid conflict for the rest of our lives. So I was very conflict averse, as you probably were too, because I never saw my parents make up. I don't even think they ever did fucking make up. It was just like blowouts and name calling and fucked up shit, and it was like walking on eggshells. Whole different story with my stepmom and my dad. So yeah, repair is huge. If we don't get that, we don't know what that means.
So the reason why that we wanted to go through all of these traumas and the symptoms are because, like, when you have a traumatic event, which you've had them, and when you've had a traumatic event, you develop coping mechanisms and adaptive strategies, and they are great at solving certain problems, and they are bad at solving other things. And some of them create more problems.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of times we over-identify with the adaptive strategy. Mm-hmm. So, I became a people pleaser, and luckily either became an extrovert or was born an extrovert and benefited from some of the assets of getting energy from making friends and feeding off of social cues. So I got all these like superpowers around building a network, and I thought that was awesome. And I think, in my mind, I had it like, identified the things, the trauma that I had been through or the circumstances as the reason for that. But I didn't acknowledge any of the dysfunction that came with it, because I didn't know if I could separate the good from the bad, and to bring it back to what you said at the beginning, when you have to be whole. And
wholeness.
Yeah. And there's some shadow aspects to the light, and the more you ignore something, the more it controls you. Mm-hmm. And for me, in my experiences, the more that I shoved away, like, my inability to recognize my needs, or to say no, or to have crucial conversations, or have healthy conflict, the more that I ignored those things, the worse my life got.
Mm-hmm. What you resist persists.
That's right.
Those are calling in statements, I believe.
That's right. And this leads us to like feeling like we like so I think the way that for me it is connected with this dark night of the soul is that there's a part of me that I need to let go of in order to grow into the next phase. And I feel like it's, for me, my life and my growth has been a series of letting go of more and more parts of me that aren't serving me, so that I can embrace the person that I want to be a little bit more fully. And so that's why being able to make somebody else uncomfortable, or to being able to disappoint other people authentically, was a big win for me, because I had to let go of this idea that everyone needed to like me, mm-hmm. and that I was responsible for everyone's, happiness. And when I was able to do that, then I immediately was free to take on more challenges and responsibility in my business. I could serve more people, because I wasn't living or dying by whether or not one person, thought I was a good trainer or a good coach or a good, business owner. And that leads me to the next piece of like, okay, now I have to go to the next level and be more present and more vulnerable and authentic. And those are, TBD as I work on those skills. And for me, it's been through addressing this stuff. And letting go one by one, or at least engaging in the conversation with myself about mm-hmm. what, where these come from and what I need. Mm-hmm. when you think about your career and your success, or happiness, like, do you feel like there's a linear or at least a related relationship between doing this parts work or shadow work, or what do you call yourself, a Jungian?
I'm not technically trained Jungian analyst. You have to go to a Jung Institute for that. It's like freaking Navy SEAL buds for therapists. Like, it's so hard to get into, and they just thump you over the head with your own work before you can talk to other people. But my PhD was at Pacific Graduate Institute, and I had a lot of Jungian, Freudian, just basically called depth psychology. It's things to do with unconscious dreams and things like that. And so, yeah, the shadow is his theory, and that's anything you disown and put off into this big giant sort of bag that you don't want to think about, but still there. You know, like the AA people say that your addiction's out in the parking lot doing push-ups. If you don't do it, it's kind of the same sort of idea. You push things in the shadow, what you resist persists. And there's this thing called the golden shadow too, like good things you had to push down. Like say you were very musically inclined, but your dad said, you're going to be an accountant. And so you stuff that shit in the bag. You can go get that later and reclaim it. Like still a latent possibility in you. So if there's good stuff you push down too, you can go claim. So you want to explore the shadow. And that topic is we could do a whole podcast on the shadow and shadow work. That's a lot, but it's amazing. And then we talk about parts work. I've been doing a lot of what's called internal family systems therapy with my own therapist. There's a big wait list to get trained in it, so I am on that wait list. But I've read the books and sort of self-taught a little bit, and I'm kind of learning through my therapist as well. And there's a lot of overlap with shadow work and parts of yourself. So you said you're letting go of parts of yourself. They would say more like talk to those wounded parts and let them know that you can run the show from your highest self, so they can grow and they get out of the driver's seat, so to speak, and you can be in the driver's seat. That's another lengthy conversation, but that's one other way to work at this kind of stuff.
Well, no, that's great. And so, maybe we're in the tactics part of this episode now. But yes, I recently got the, prompts to reach out to my inner child and, ask myself how, young Josh or little Josh has shown up today, and, that he can relax and he can let me take over.
Yeah, they like to be asked in that theory. They like to be asked, are you amenable to relaxing while we, do this little experiment? It's something we're scared of. And if you get like a lightness feeling, then maybe they're talking. Sometimes they say, screw you. They're not ready. They don't trust you yet. That's kind of part of the theory. But yeah, you want to talk to them and ask them permission. They want to know that they're seen, because they're just little us's that have felt abandoned by the world and us. And like they feel like they had to do the work because we couldn't, as from our highest self as a kid, because we didn't have the facts of the world yet. So they kind of sprang up, and they're called, managers and firefighters. And then down below is in the shadow realm is called the exiles. Those are just the core wounds. And the managers and firefighters sort of keep you going. The managers are sort of critics, and the firefighters are more like addictions and avoidance kind of behaviors. So you want to talk to these parts and have a relationship. And if there's a relationship, then there's trust. And if there's trust, they can trust you from the highest self. And they love that. Then they relax, because that's all they want. It's like, you're the captain, you run this motherfucker, cool. And you have a series of questions you ask them, and sometimes you say, like, what if you didn't have to do this job, what would you rather do? And you'll get weird things like, I just want to paint. It's like, cool, go off and paint, or whatever. You get all kinds of.
That's the response from the child, or
any part you're talking to. It's really psychedelic without the psychedelics. And when I first did it, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I did. Dr. Schwartz is the founder of it. He has this great audio series called Greater Than the Sum of Your Parts. And he goes through the theory in his little meditations where he talks you through it. I was like, no, this is cool. I was having a good day. And he did one, and I burst into tears. I'm like, holy shit, this works. It blew my mind. And so I just deep dove. I was like, where has this been? Like, are we doing therapy all wrong? I mean, this is just groundbreaking to me. So I've been doing deep dives into that. There's a lot of overlap with that theory and all theories, but he gives a nod to Jung because he was definitely an influence. But
well, on the piece of this, that we've been talking about, feeling lost, having trauma and dysfunction, and, and symptoms of trauma, then let's wrap it up with like, what if if you've had a problematic upbringing and you've had trauma on your path, are you traumatized? Is there what's the like, is there a what's the hope for somebody who is figuring this stuff out, and let's say they identify themselves as like having some of these trauma pieces in their upbringing or in their recent past? Is that the end of the story?
That they're traumatized and
they're fucked.
Screwed?
Yeah.
It could be. If you don't, yeah. Well, part of it is you don't know what you don't know, right? And society doesn't do a good job about. Well, I think it's getting better about talking about this kind of stuff. Look at our childhood in the '80s. It's pretty rough. Before then, pretty rough. But yeah, I think psychotherapy is for everybody. Some people may disagree with that. Anybody could benefit. And even if you're not in a pit and things are fine, you could optimize, like keep going. Like then it becomes more like coaching, like cool, you're functioning well, let's do it even better. People forget that. I see a lot of people, they get themselves out of the pit and they go, oh, I'm good. And then they dip out and then come back later because they forget life comes at you. Existentially, life, what is the first noble truth of Buddhism? Life involves suffering. It's going to hit, you're going to get punched in the face again. So they come back. Or they realize, I'm good, but there's more I could do to do better. And that's more of the coaching aspect of our field. And psychotherapy is more like, you're in the swamplands. We got to go down there. There's shit to claim down there, but we don't have to stay down there. So therapy, coaching, all these things can definitely help. For some people, it's medications. That's dependent on that person. Sometimes you do meds. In order to do therapy, you take the edge off so you're not so dysregulated, and you can come off them later. Certain cases, like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, probably going to have to be on those for the rest of your life. ADD, probably going to have to be on those for the rest of your life. Some cases not, but most cases, yes.
So, I'm picturing a spectrum. On the closer to the dysfunction, more medication, more medical grade therapy. And then the higher up the spectrum of function that you are climbing, the more coaching and the more
self-work even.
Yeah. And it's not it's three-dimensional, right? So you could be very high functioning in some areas of your life.
Oh yeah.
And then low functioning other places that need a lot more support.
100%.
Yeah. I don't think I've been a self-development person for 20 years now, at least. And I don't think I can live without a lot of support, at least some level of support in the mental, emotional, some level of support in the, spiritual, physical. Like I have to have,
also important.
I have to be doing the work for me to feel like I'm not drowning and moving backwards.
Yeah, and I just forgot one key important factor in all this is your physical health. That's what people come to you. You got to get your body back. Trauma wreaks havoc on the body, and you start doing therapy and you start getting your body back. You start eating better. You start sleeping. You start working out. And it's so helpful.
Oh yeah, and there isn't any. I don't think that there is a trauma that doesn't have a physical manifestation. I was just watching Bill Burr talk about his upbringing, and his dad was such an angry, random, unpredictably angry. All of his siblings developed physical ailments when they were kids. So Bill Burr got alopecia. His brother had back pain, and they're all like 10, 14, 11. His sister had gut issues. She had IBS, to develop, and they were all just like, traumatized and trying to figure out how to avoid the ire of their dad, And he makes a joke out of it, of course.
Mm.
But
a lot of comedians are suffering, but that's why they're so good at what they do.
yeah. Well, and I think so back to the beginning for me of like this nihilistic. I had such a nihilistic, despondent, unplugged, like just angry view of the world. But I also really valued black humor,
Mm.
humor. And the
military give you so much more fodder.
So good, so good. It was so bad. It was so bad.
It's hard for the civilian world to understand that, or the military get it, law enforcement get it, the doctors, trauma and surgeons get it. And I don't know if there's another realm, but most people, you pull that out and they're like, what the fuck's wrong with you? But you need that levity in those dark times. It's very helpful.
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think like just leaning into that, and I think if you can make a joke about something, you can create just enough space to breathe.
I like that.
And if I'm so in it and I can't joke about it, that means that I need to slow down and deal, because that's a sign that I'm still physically experiencing it.
Yeah.
So that's exactly right. Yeah. Humor is super important. Gosh, man, we covered a lot of ground. Anything that you want to jump into the problematic beginnings before we segment, go into the next segment?
Say more. What do you mean?
I'm just trying to create a nice bow on our summary of origin stories and how commonplace trauma and coping mechanisms can be interwoven into our lives without us knowing and without people really talking about it, especially if they're our age.
Yeah, you don't know sometimes. But pay attention to your body. But those are good trailheads, as the IFS language would say, into what's going on. Depression and anxiety, the big ones, are a symptom for a reason. Like if you bang your knee, it fucking hurts. You look down, you rub it, see if you're bleeding out, whatever. It's weird, but we have physical emotions. What do we do? We go la 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 la. It didn't happen. Stuff it down. We would never do that if we banged our fucking knees. Like, that didn't happen to me. Pay attention. It's the same phenomena. Like if something's going on inside you, like why is it doing that? What is it trying to tell me? Well, don't ignore this symptom. I know you want to, but it sucks.
Yeah.
But it's a trailhead into what could be going on.
Well, this is a great segue into masculinity and how we our emotions, because they're independent they're problematic for our caretakers. They often get invalidated, and we get 100%. Encouraged to stuff them down.
Yes.
And
into the shadow.
That's happens to men and women, yep. But stoicism is a quality of masculinity that is toxic. And
you mean stoicism with a small s?
Yes, stoicism, the demeanor, not the
actual
philosophy.
Beautiful philosophy.
The way of going. That's right.
Well,
exactly.
Say about that.
Not Marcus Aurelius, but being deadpan.
Yeah, a misinterpretation that you don't have emotions to be stoic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is not real.
That's right. Well, we got to take it back. Maybe that'll be another side goal. We're taking it back.
Hell yeah.
But cool, man. We'll wrap this up and we'll kick it into gear for our next episode.
Brilliant. We're out.